I swear to God, if you make noise. Hi. Wanna come here? Do you wanna be in the video? No? You don't wanna cuddle? Do you not love me anymore? Hmm? Hi my little raindrops, welcome back to the channel. My name is Desiree. It is so nice to have you here. Get comfy, grab a drink and some snacks because we're going to be talking about the books that I read in October. So, thinking about how busy October was for me, I think it was also an incredibly good reading month. So considering I had so many midterms and exams and essays and assignments, I mean, having been able to read 9 books is absolutely amazing, and I am so grateful for my brain to have cooperated with me this month. So I guess we're just gonna get right into it. I'm gonna drink some water because I'm about to talk for such a long time. Okay, so the first book that I read in October was Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. This book was amazing. Okay, like I was not expecting to love this as much as I did, but it had absolutely everything that I was wanting when I started reading it. So this is a YA fantasy romance type of situation, although I will say I've been finding that what is now considered YA tends to be more like new adult now. YA stands for young adult and NA is new adult. So I've been finding a lot of said YA books to have a bit more mature content than what once was considered YA. So this, I mean, it's not like explicit stuff, at least not in this one, but there is like, how old is she? I think she's 18 or something, which is a relatively appropriate age for some of the stuff that happens in there, but the age of the reader has to be like reevaluated, I would say. I mean, with every single book you want to make sure that you check the content and trigger warnings if you're going to be getting this for a younger sibling for Christmas, right? But regardless of that, this book was so good. I am absolutely obsessed and in love with Wrath. This man, definitely one of the best like book boyfriends I've read in a very long time. So this book focuses around Amelia when her twin sister Victoria gets murdered, and so when she comes across her sister's body, one of the 7 wicked, Wrath, who is a demon, is like at the scene. Amelia and Wrath have this very amazing enemies to lovers relationship. I mean, like, they hate each other. Like, you can tell that Amelia really doesn't like the guy, and he also like doesn't necessarily like her, and he's a grump, right? But he's also like a cocky type of teasing grump, but not the tease as in like necessarily obvious flirting type of grump, more like he knows he's hot and he kind of uses it, if that makes sense. But at the same time, he has such a huge heart. Like, do you get the vibe that's going on here? He's amazing. He is fantastic. He is lovely, and the aspect of magic in this book is really like, it was perfect for October, but I think this would be perfect to read anytime. You could read this in summer, you could read this in fall, in spring, in winter, who cares? It's just great. And I do have the second book in my TBR cart for November, so I am so excited to read it. Do know that this is a trilogy. The third book recently came out. I think it came out in early October. It came out as a hardcover first. The paperback versions usually come out like a year later, which since I annotated the first book in paperback, I was like crying when I realized that the third one only came out in hardcover. I did not want to have to wait another year to finish the series, although I've done that before, but I was able to find a paperback version of Kingdom of the Feared, which is the third book, online, and I'm so excited for it to get here. It was a bit more expensive than what you would normally pay for the paperback, but you know what? I don't care. I just really want to be able to annotate 1, 2, and 3 in paperback. Is my reasoning strange? Yeah, but you know what? Who cares? It was spectacular. The world building is great. The characters are great. The story itself, the plot lines, everything is so great. It's the kind of book where I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I hadn't had that kind of book, like that kind of book experience in so long, so I was so happy to have it again with this book and the next one as well. I just couldn't get them out of my head. Like, I'd be studying or in class or doing whatever, and I'd just be like, oh, I can't wait to get home so I can just like sneak in a chapter or two before I need to work on something else. So good. I can't get over it. The next book that I read after that was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This made like my inner 13-year-old so happy because it is so similar to Pretty Little Liars, but at the same time it's very different but very similar. Like, we get the same type of like Alison De Laurentiis Mean Girl and Alison De Laurentiis Murder type of thing, but then like, okay, I need to reorganize my thoughts. This starts off with Pip. Okay, she's the main character. Although this is told in third person, I'm not a huge fan of third person, but if I can get in the right mindset for it, then I will usually really enjoy it. And I was able to with this one. So Pip is a senior in high school, and she has to write like a final essay, or like she has a final assignment, and she decides to kind of dig deeper into the murder of Andy Bell, which happened 5 years ago. Andy was the very popular girl at the same high school as Pip, and her boyfriend Sal was Ravi's older brother, and so Pip kind of gets closer with Ravi at first to get more information. You know, she interviews him and wants to get more info on Sal, because it is believed that Sal is the one who killed Andy Bell, because not long after Andy went missing, Sal took his own life. And there was a message being like, I'm so sorry I did it, blah, blah, blah. So everything leads back to him, right? Like, he has to be the culprit. He has to be the killer. But what if he isn't? Right? So this entire book follows Pip and how she gets closer to Sal and how they work together to try to figure out who really killed Andy Bell. Like, what happened, right? And so throughout this book, I have a tab for clues and theories, and it is just everywhere. Like, this had me thinking 24/7. It was so good. I love it when a book makes you think, not necessarily like, oh yeah, it makes you think about the meaning of life and etc. I have quite a few that I really liked that have that same type of make you think type of thing. But when a book makes you think as if you're a detective, oh, I love them. I find it very odd that I say that, and yet I don't read much mystery and crime, just because, honestly, I don't know why I don't read much of it. I have a tendency to really like having some kind of romance in a book. If that's not for you, it's obviously fine, but it is it for me. I just like to have a kind of something that balances the heavy topics with something that's a little bit lighter or fluffier, or that just makes you feel good while you're reading about someone who got murdered, right? So this book has it. The relationship between Sal and Pip is so sweet. It's adorable. It will make you giggle, laugh, squeal, cry, scream, all of the above. And I mean, there's a map, okay? There are maps and there are drawings and there are so many things in here. And the way that it's kind of like the actual layout of the book is that she has her assignment entries, because she has to write these entries throughout her progress of the capstone project. That's what it's called. And so one chapter will be her entries for this project, and then she'll also have transcripts of interviews that she's done with people around the town regarding the murder. And then the next chapter will be like actually what's going on right now, and it'll just be like her experiencing her day-to-day life while also like working towards getting answers for this project. And I will just say the plot twists in here were so good. Personally, I didn't get any insane like gasping moments, like, no, like I didn't really experience something that intense, because I have a tendency to like over unpack everything, over analyze everything. So when there's a possibility that this character did that, then I'm gonna really like overanalyze the heck out of it. And so I did have a bit of a theory of what happens at the end, but at the same time it completely caught me by surprise. Does that make any kind of sense? I'm hoping it does. But it did, like, for me, it still had that surprise kind of effect. And I did have a couple moments where I was like, no way. But I didn't have anything where I was like, oh, sorry. You know, that type of thing. But I rated this 5 stars, and genuinely, I would probably rate it infinity stars if I had to go up to that point. It's such a good book. I also have the second one in my TBR cart for November, and it's a trilogy, although there is like a 4th book which is more of a novella where we get to see how Pip got into all this detective investigation type of stuff. But I thought the second book was going to be a continuation of this. It has a good closure, yet there's still, like, in the second book, it's like another crime or another situation that's going on, yet they're still interconnected. Not only was it very well written, was it great to escape in, it was also insanely entertaining. You know, when you read a book, like, sometimes I'm just gonna read a book to feel certain emotions. Other times I want to read a book because I want to be entertained, right? Like, it's kind of like the same idea as watching TV or a movie. When you're doing a task, like, for example, when I cut my bookmarks, when I cut, laminate, all that stuff, I will watch something, and that's like to pass the time. Other times I will watch something to make me feel something. Other times I'm gonna find like this really good movie or this really good series, and I'm gonna start it because I want to be entertained. Like, I want to watch the screen non-stop. That was it. Like, this was the non-stop type of thing. I couldn't put it down. It was so hard to put it down and do the other stuff that I had to do for the day. Oh, it was so good. So good. I really recommend it. It was fantastic. After that, I actually read a collection of poems. This was sent to me by HarperCollins, and if I'm not mistaken, it is coming out in November 2022. It's coming out on the 8th. It is And Yet by Kate Bayer. This was actually really good. I am a big fan of poetry, although I don't read poetry often. This was very refreshing in a sense. I'll read the back a little bit. It dives deeper into the themes that are the hallmarks of her writing, which are motherhood, friendship, love, and loss. There were, I don't know, maybe a good 10 poems in here that just had me closing the book and just pondering, right? So this was the kind of book that makes you feel emotions, if we're continuing from what I was saying earlier. As someone who does not read poetry often, I think this was very interesting to go into, because I don't necessarily have the best of skills to analyze poetry, even though I did take a class at university for it and had a blast with it. It's not something that I have perfected over the years, right? But this was still, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Like, the couple of poems that I tabbed, I couldn't stop thinking about them. And I also posted about it on my Instagram, and I mean, the titles of the poems themselves are also so very interesting, and she does address the pandemic a little bit in her poems, as well as motherhood, like it said in the back, friendship, love, family, all of that stuff. And I read this within like 30 minutes because it's a very small collection. It's also very easy to go through. I mean, this is poetry, right? Like, the pages are not super filled. So it was a great kind of cleanser between A Good Girl's Guide to Murder and the next book that I read. And I also really liked that I got back into poetry a little bit. I'm super grateful that HarperCollins sent me this because it got me back into the world of poems. I feel like I'm a little bit underqualified to review poetry because I haven't been reading it for that long, but if you'd like to give it a shot, I think this is definitely worth looking into as of November 8th. Then the next book I read was for class. This was for my literature written by women after the 1900s class, but it is also a book that I've been wanting to read for like 2 or 3 years. This is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Holy crap, was this ever good. I completely understand why it was so hyped up. I don't even think I will be able to sum up the right words to compromise everything that happens in this book. It's definitely eye-opening. It is definitely frustrating, but it has such a great message, which I believe will vary from reader to reader, but at the end will have the same main goal through that message. And especially with all the events that have occurred in recent months, recent years, and just in life in general. Like, if you want to get a better idea of women's rights, their lack thereof, and what could potentially happen, I don't even have words for this. This book gave me so many chills. I just annotated this so much, saying like, what the heck is going on? Why are they doing this? What if this actually happened in real life? Because this was horrifying. There are a lot of aspects in here that I found would be incredibly it could happen. This entire thing could happen 10 years from now, 20, 30, 50, 5 years from now, 2 months from now, who knows? Just in one day, a new law was made where everything regarding women's rights, the way they live their lives, was just gone. Like, they couldn't work anymore. They were divided into these different classes, which still kind of refers to social ranks. And then the power that men held, which is not something that we are unfamiliar with, but that is enhanced in this book and that is made more obvious. The way that handmaids are treated and how they are used merely for their womb. And there's a second book called The Testament, which I believe it's like 15 years after the end of this one, but it still touches back to the story of Offred, which is the name of this character, the main character in the story. It's not her real name. She was given this name when she became a handmaid, but the Testament follows the life of her children, which kind of refer back to Offred's story, which I'm getting that book as soon as I possibly can. This was so good. 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. I don't know. This is not something I would have read like super quickly. I know I said that I'd been wanting to read it for a while, and that is mostly because my mom read this for her book club, and it's also a very popular book, and so I wanted to see what the hype was about. But I kept putting it off, like, oh, it's not, I don't think I'm gonna like it that much, so I'll just put it off for now. But when I saw that I had to read it for class, I was like, oh, well, about time that I read it, right? About time that I see what the hype is all about. And it was so good. I mean, I had to do a bit of a kind of a presentation for this book, and I chose to focus on the topic of love throughout this book. We had such an interesting conversation when I brought this up, because it is there. Even in a world where love does not seem to belong nor exist, it is there. And it is there through various characters, and it turns out to be a very important theme in the novel. I'm feeling very much English major vibes right now, but I mean, that is what I am. So just think about it, because I thought about this for so long after finishing the book. In the end, at first I was kind of like, what? And then after talking about it in class, I was like, that was the perfect ending. And might have been influenced by my professor. I don't know. That woman has very strong opinions, but I kind of appreciate it because it made me enjoy the book even more. Genuinely, I think that if you've been wanting to read it, just go for it. And again, these are all my personal opinions. I'm not a professional reviewer. I'm not in any way, shape, or form the person to listen to find good books. But if you have a similar taste as me, you might find this an enjoyable read. You might find any of these books enjoyable reads, or you might not, and that's fine. Give give it a shot, right? Maybe go to the bookstore, sit down right on the floor or on a chair if the floor is too dirty, and try to read maybe a chapter or two. And if you find yourself enamored by the story, buy it. Or rent it at the library. Do whatever you will. I recommend this. After that, I read a book by one of my favorite authors, Lillian T. James, and that is Untainted. This was not what I'd expected it to be, but it was still very, very good nonetheless. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a 4-book series. But the second book is coming out very soon, and Lillian had reached out to me after I posted a lot about it that she would like to send me an arc of the second book. And I hadn't read the first book yet. I had ordered it, but I hadn't read it yet. So when I got it, I was like, I need to read this right now. And so I started reading it, and it is very, like, If ACOTAR, which stands for A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and From Blood and Ash by Jennifer Armentrout had a baby, and then mix that with the typical Lillian T. James humor, I think that pretty much sums this book up. Basically, Vera was kidnapped slash taken to a different kingdom when she was a kid, and so she's been brought up as the ward of the weapons master of this new kingdom. And so one day, a guy from her home kingdom arrives, and he gets like this close to killing her. But then there's just like something happens. There's a recognition between these two. She's one of them. And so you keep going through the story and you see that these two grow closer. But then Vera is meant to create a bond with the prince of the kingdom she was kidnapped to. It's how should I say this? Like, I don't want to say it's all over the place, but it's kind of all over the place while still having really good structure. Does that make sense? I don't know. There's just so much happening in here. And yes, there is some spicy stuff in here. It is definitely 18 or 19 plus. You know how there's usually like the one bed trope or the one something trope? Well, there's a one horse trope. And I don't just mean that there's one horse to get to their destination and they have to share it. There is that, but there's also, like, you know, a little something else to it. So I rated this 4 stars. Why did I rate it 4 stars? I still really loved it. It's just, I'm still kind of reevaluating how what my rating system is. I'm not gonna lie to you, I genuinely don't know, like, I could not explain to you what my rating system is at this time. I think I need to, like, ponder over that a little bit today. Like, what does 4 stars mean? I think that 4 stars mean it's a book I really enjoyed, but it's not a book that I would reread. I think that's what the rating is going to be. So that is the case for this one. I've read it once and I can remember it, and I think that is plenty enough for me. Does that make sense? We're gonna say it makes sense. Then, the next book I read. I was at Chapters, as one does. And I was in the fiction section and I came across this book. And I took it off the shelf because of the cover. And not gonna lie, I don't usually like hardcovers all that much, especially not when they're just like these bland covers. So I don't know why I took it. I guess it's because the aesthetic was a vibe. And then I saw that this was written by Adrienne, I want to say Adrienne Young. And she's the author of quite a few books that are popular. Haven't read them. This was my very first book by her. And boy oh boy am I ever happy to have taken this, because this is now in my journal for like my favorite books ever, which I often make videos for. I will put that here. This book made me so happy because it had the perfect balance of plot, relationship development, second chance romance, spookiness, and like there was a bit like, it was like magic realism. Like they were on an island, and every single woman on this island is said to be a witch or to have some kind of power where they can, you know, they can cast curses and cast spells. So that is kind of what this is about. And Emery which is the main character. This book is in both Emery's point of view as well as the love interest, August. But then you also get the point of views of a couple of characters and like random characters that are not all that random. They're important and their point of views are very important. You will realize this as you get closer to the end of the book. But you get there. Why does it feel like I have something on my face? Okay. So you get their point of views just like out of nowhere, but it's not really out of nowhere. It's very important for the context of the story. It's very important for the end of the story. It's very important overall. But you'll only get like one chapter from their point of view, and it's really just to help you kind of understand the story a little bit better. And if you've been following me for a while, you will know how obsessed I am with the book Small Favors by Erin A. Craig. That book had the perfect balance of like cute romance, amazing entertaining plot development, and like spook. This was it. The first, maybe third or so of the book was really hard to get through. I'm not gonna lie. I considered stopping reading it altogether and starting something else and going back to it a little later, but I really wanted to keep going because there are these little elements in the beginning that get you to have theories, and you just want to keep going to see what's gonna happen. Are my theories right? What's gonna happen between Ellery and August? Are they gonna get back together? Because as teens, Emery and August were friends with these other two people, Lily Morgan, who was Emery's best friend, and then there's another guy, Dutch. Dutch was another, like, they were a group of 4 best friends: August, Dutch, Emery, and Lily. And so Lily died when I think they were like 18, and August is the one that was blamed for her murder. And so August left the island with his mom after, like, they needed to go to have a better life. And Emery just never got over it because she thought, like, he left me, we were supposed to leave the island together and make a life for ourselves, but he just left me, you know, like, just a huge amount of misunderstandings. And then many years later, August comes back to the island because his mom has passed, and in her will she wants to be buried on the island. And so when he gets back to the island, everyone knows about them. Everybody knows about August and Emery. Everybody knows about Lily's death. Everybody knew about these 4 kids who were this close. And so when he gets to the island, everybody's like, you stay away from Emery. You don't need to, like, open the wounds again. But obviously, open the wounds they shall, because they get brought back together. And then a bunch of hints and clues and secrets surface, and then we get to find out the truth about Lily's murder. Oh, it was so good. Like, I think, where did the excitement begin? Okay, I think it's about, like, page 224-ish. That stuff, like, really gets intense and, like, oh my god, no, that did not happen. That did not happen. Like, just a billion questions. And you can't stop going. I couldn't stop going. It is sad that I had to read, like, a good chunk of this book to get to the point where I just couldn't put it down. But I still rated this, like, 5 stars and put it in my favorite books ever journal. So I really liked it. And it's just, like, the plot twists. Oh, the plot twists and the secrets that came to surface. It was so good. And there wasn't anything necessarily, like, horror type of stuff. There was just stuff that was, like, spooky. The forest and the island, like, the island is the one that has all this magic, and she feeds it to the women of the island. And you actually get a chapter towards the end of the book that is told in the island's point of view, which I just found to be so smart and just amazing. It was spectacular. I loved it. It had everything in it that I wanted. I will say again, took a little while for me to get into, but it was worth it. Like, with the ending, this also kind of really gave, it kind of gave Pretty Little Liars type of vibe as well, just a tiny bit. I guess I would like to compare it to Spencer and Melissa Hastings. The relationship they had, like the toxicity. I think that's kind of what Emery and Lily had. Something along those lines. It was messed up. Stuff that happened, like when the truth is revealed, it is messed up. But it's so good. After that, I wanted something a little bit lighter, and I actually had started this book before. I didn't even say the title. Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young. So before I started this, Accidentally Amy by Lynn Painter, and I wasn't getting into it because it's insanely cringy. It's cringy and it's cheesy, but let me get into it a little bit. So then I went into that, and when I finished that, I wanted something lighter, so I went back to this. If you've read anything by Lynn Painter before, you will know that she's very, like, her writing is very quirky, funny. It gets cringy and cheesy, but it's not, like, that bad. This one, but I still rated this 4 stars. Now hear me out. If you hated this, I'm sorry you hated it. I'm genuinely sorry that you read a book and did not enjoy it. It's not a fun thing. But why did I rate this 4 stars? Well, let me tell you. First off, I had just finished reading a book that was very heavy, and so I was in need of something that was just funny and just like quick to read and just like a palate cleanser, right? And this is exactly what it is. It's a palate cleanser. There's not necessarily an intense plot. There's not a lot of build-up all that much. It's literally just a woman and a man who accidentally met at a Starbucks, and turns out they work together. And because they work together, they can't be together, but they have intense chemistry. So they decide to become friends. And then they really want to be more than friends. And so stuff happens. And then they become more than friends. And they're super happy. And then something else happens where they can't be more than friends anymore. And so that's a whole thing. But then they figure it out. And now they can be more than friends. And they're super happy about it. So that's all this was. And I think if I'd read this before this, I would have given it like maybe 2.5 or 3 stars. But I gave it 4 stars because it was the perfect palate cleanser to transfer between books. It was also super short and super easy to read, so it helped me get my read book count up, which I'm very grateful for. But it was also just like, what could I compare this to? Okay, you know when you read a book and you're like shaking in emotion, crying, and you're just like, that was so good. I'm so happy I read it. You know, that kind of reaction? That's not it. This is more the like, oh, okay, I can read another book now. This kind of balanced all that emotion that I had going on. I can move to something else. That's more what this is about. And if this happened to be your favorite book ever, I'm so glad you found a favorite book, because those are not easy to find. Like, it's the writing that's cringy. That's the thing. It's just like Lynn uses, oh god, with like AWWWWD, which, I mean, I say that. I say it in person. When someone tells me something, I'm like, oh god. But there's just something about seeing it in a book that just gives me the ick. Like, it's horrendous. It's so bad. But then the humor in here, because Lynn is really funny. Like, she is so funny, and I love her for it. But there is so much cringy stuff going on in here, which, like, they're texting, and she's like, hashtag new nickname, and he's like, hashtag you wish, and then she's like, hashtag drive carefully, and then he's like, hashtag I will, which it gave me the ick, but at the same time, like, it's kind of cute. But to read it, it's just like, oh no, this does not belong in a book. Like, it's just way too modern. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not a huge fan of modernity in books. Like, don't talk about TikTok, don't use hashtags, don't write how you text or talk. It's just, those kind of things tend to give me the ick unless they're very well used. And in this case, it was spread throughout the book. a little bit too much. So that's why it was just like, oh, you know, like, oh no. But it was funny and it was cute. So still gave it 4 stars. After that, I read my book club book for the Tabby's Annotating Book Club. If you've been wanting to join a book club and I've been wanting to kind of focus on annotating, my book club is dedicated to annotating. You can join the book club on Fable, and I do my best to post pictures of my annotations on every chapter channel as much as I can. So you can see it here. There is a link in the description if ever you want to go look through it, or if you'd like to join. It is free to join Fable, doesn't cost anything. You can buy ebooks on Fable, however, so that's like the only place where you would be spending money on the app. And you can also talk with a bunch of people on the channels, share your thoughts, cry about characters together. It's great, it's amazing. And then you can also share your own annotations through pictures, and you can share your favorite quotes, and it is spectacular. But the book that I read with my book club in October was When in Rome by Sarah Adams, and this was so good. It also made it to the favorite books ever journal. This is like pure sugar in book form. Do you get what I mean? Like, it's so sweet. Amelia Rose, known as Ray Rose to her adoring fans, because she is like this super successful pop singer. She's had enough of being a superstar. She's exhausted, she's burnt out, she's having to deal with too much stuff with her agent and all that stuff. So she's a huge Audrey Hepburn fan, and based on the movie When in Rome, she decides to go to Rome to escape her issues and rejuvenate, to get rid of the burnout. Except she goes to Rome, Kentucky. That's the nearest place to go by car. And she somehow manages to crash in someone's front yard. And this someone happens to be Noah Walker, who is kind of like the grump of the town, and he's also loved by everyone in the town. And he's also the owner of a pie shop in town. Okay, so he has a huge heart. He is rather grumpy, and he's very set on not falling in love anytime soon because he has past trauma with his ex-fiance. But, you know, like, he's not evil, so he offers her his spare bedroom in his house until she can get her car fixed and get the hell out of there. Except, while Amelia was supposed to go stay at the bed and breakfast in town, the owner of the bed and breakfast is also very, very, very close with Noah. She's been a kind of grandmother to him. And she's like, oh, sorry, we're fully booked. Cue Michelle from Gilmore Girls. I'm sorry, we're completely booked. Although she really wasn't. But she did that to get them to stay close together and, you know, build up the chemistry. Which they did, okay? They stay together, and she manages to break through his grump wall, and she gets these little laughs and smiles from him, and he becomes so enamored with her, and he's thinking about her nonstop, and she's thinking about him nonstop. And I was a bit hesitant because we choose our books by spinning a wheel, the members of the book club, because the Tabby's Annotating Book Club has like a main group on Discord. We're only 30. I haven't been accepting any more members, which is why I made the Fable group. And so members from the original club will recommend books, and then we'll spin a wheel. So when we landed on this and I saw that Amelia was a pop star / singer, I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna like this. Because in the past, any books that I've read with like famous people in it, I've had a bit of a hard time liking the characters that are playing the famous rock star or pop star or whatever, because sometimes they're just too self-centered. But Amelia really is not. She seems like such a fun girl to be with. I would love her to be my best friend. That's like, she's not selfish. She is actually insanely selfless. Like, she hardly puts herself first, which is an issue, and I'm so glad that she works through that through becoming friends with Noah. But she's been so great to read about. I think it's very hard to portray someone who is famous, because in real life, famous, like, for people who become famous, well, fame can get to their head or to their ego, right? And so that can be annoying. It truly can. And so I think that's what makes it kind of hard to portray it in a way that doesn't make the reader annoyed with the character. But Sarah did such a good job at making Amelia someone that is more relatable than anything I've read in quite some time. This was funny. This was cute. It's not spicy. It's mostly like fade to black. Although there is like maybe 1 or 2 scenes that like the tension is so intense that it gives a very spicy type of feeling. I would give it maybe like 1 hot pepper out of 5. I think. Approximately. And it's just, oh, it's so heartwarming. The way that they fall in love with each other and the way that they become friends first and foremost. And they're stuck living together, right? So they kind of have to act like a couple, even though at first they're trying to not interact with each other. And then they're friends, so they're okay with it, but they're still like, they're living together, so it feels like they're a couple. And then they're an actual couple, and it's so, oh, it's so sweet. Like the last 100 or so pages. Okay, if you want to see my reactions to reading the last 30 pages, I will link the TikTok video that I recorded, because I recorded my reactions for the last 30 pages and I made a TikTok for it, and so many people have said your reactions are absolutely relatable. So I will link it in the description if ever you want to go give this a look. I mean, it's pretty funny. I will admit, it's pretty funny. I gave this 5 stars. It was such a feel-good book. The second I finished it, I think like 2 days after, I went to Chapters and I got the cheat sheet by Sarah Adams as well, because I love her writing style. She has become an instant buy author for me. Her books are always relatively small. They're sweet. Well, I haven't read any other of her books, so I'm kind of assuming that they're sweet and funny, but I love her writing style. I love it so much. It's a warm hug. It's a slice of hot apple pie with vanilla ice cream on a cold winter day. I love it. I love it so much. Oh, I can't recommend it enough. Last but not least, I'm gonna need some water for this one because we're gonna be here for a while. Oh, okay. I need to figure out how I'm going to explain this because this book has become insanely controversial. I will say my rating at the end of the review so that, you know, I don't like shock any of you right away. If you follow me on Instagram, you already know what the review is. But I am going to say this first and foremost. I went in with a very, very specific mindset and a very specific expectation, or rather a set of expectations for It Starts With Us. Okay, I knew exactly what I was hoping to get, and it is exactly what I got. Hence why I loved it. I went in expecting nothing else but an extended epilogue of where we left off in It Ends With Us. I did not expect much of a plot. I did not expect any plot twists or any intense development or any, you know, like, you know how a book would usually have a climax? I did not expect this one to even have a climax, which, I mean, it does have like a tiny one, but it's not something as drastic as It Ends With Us. I just wanted more Atlas and Lily. That is all I wanted. Some people say this gives off fan fiction, and I couldn't be happier that it gives that kind of vibe. I just wanted to see Atlas and Lily get back to being so familiar with each other. I wanted them to have a happy ending. I wanted Lily to get the joy she deserved, which she did. I wanted her to be able to live an amazing life and still provide the type of life she wants for her daughter, and she gets to do that, even though I cannot stand Ryle one bit. I despise the man, but I was still really happy to see how things were kind of okay, right? Things were not amazing, things were not horrible, things were just okay, and I was so happy to see that. And I don't want to offend anyone, I just want to give my plain old opinion, but I also want to be as honest as possible, and I think this book was great. And if you think it wasn't, I mean, It's your opinion. It is 100% valid. Because no one reads one book the same. No one has this 100% same identical opinions. We're all very, very different. For me, for someone who was expecting just, like, how long was this? For someone who was expecting a 320-page long epilogue, this was great. This was what I'd wanted. I loved so much to see Alice and Lily just continue where they left off when they were teens, but make that just so much more. And we do get a little bit more of a plot than just Atlas and Lily getting their happy ever after. There are new characters introduced in this book, and there is also a bit of past trauma that's addressed for Atlas, but there's also such amazing relationship development for Atlas and Lily, and it just made me so happy. This is the conclusion I needed. I will say It Ends With Us finishes in a way that this would not have been necessary. I'm gonna be honest. It Ends With Us would have been completely fine without this. 100%. This did not need to be done. But I am so glad that it was, because for those of us who needed a bit more closure, who wanted to see the happy ending for Alice and Lily, I'm so glad this was there. And see, if you think this wasn't necessary, if you think, like, if you haven't read it and you think it's not necessary, that you're happy with the ending of It Ends With Us, just don't read it. Don't read it, because this is really just, it's an extended epilogue. Like, directly, like, 20 minutes after the end of It Ends With Us, this is how this starts. That's what it is. And over the course of a couple months, and then eventually a couple years, you get to the end. And that's all it is. That's truly all it is. It's nothing spectacular, but it brings so much joy. And I really think, like, it made me so happy to see them finally happy. Because these two characters went through hell. Like, they deserved this book. That's how I see it. What Colleen wrote in It Ends With Us is absolutely heartbreaking, and I do not have the words to express how sad my heart was as I read it. And it is based on, you know, it's said at the end of the book that it's based on true events and what her mom went through. And so that's even more just, it's awful, right? So to know that Atlas and Lily went through such hard and heartbreaking, and just like no kid should go through that. No human being should go through that. It's just so great to see that they can finally be happy. I know I'm repeating myself, but you know what? I don't care. I'm just so happy they finally got the happy ever after. I gave it 5 stars. And I'm really happy. It's not exactly like, would I reread this? 100%. Would I reread the entirety of it? No. I would reread the sections that I annotated that, I don't know, Atlas being in love and me simping for it, because I actually have a tab for that. And there is a couple of spicy scenes in here between Atlas and Lily, and they're just so romantic, and so, I loved it. If you wanted the happy ending, you gotta get it. Anywho, these are the books that I read in October. It was a fantastic month, and I hope that maybe you got a couple recommendations in here. If you were hesitant about reading any of these books, I hope you may have gotten the last little thing that you needed to decide whether or not you were gonna read it. And I would love to know what was one of your favorite books that you read in October. If I were to choose, I think it was When in Rome. I think I'm gonna start doing this. What was your top read of the month every time I do a reading wrap up? I think I'm gonna choose one book, but I'm pretty sure it has to be When in Rome. It was so sweet, heartfelt. Oh gosh. I shall get going because, as always, I have homework to take care of. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you like these kinds of videos and want more, make sure to subscribe and click the little notification bell so you know whenever I post more of these types of videos. And make sure to leave a like to let me know if you have any of these books that you also want to read, or if there are any of these books that you also like. And that's it. I will see you guys in the next one.